So I want you to imagine, as a little precondition for this presentation, what if it was easy to do? My name is Kristoffer. I live in Bern, and I have noticed that in Guernsey, all houses has a name. My house that I'm going to talk about, where I live, is called the Happy Bern Lab. And as Greg hinted quite elegantly, we try to do conversations in a very different way. Because often when we meet each other, it's like, hello, my name is Kristoffer, and what are you doing? We talk extremely a lot about what do we do, rather than who are we, because we cannot compete about who we are. You know, what we do, I'm a doctor. No, I'm a pilot. I'm a president. I'm James Bond. The point is that, like, there we can compete because it's boxes, but you cannot box a human. It's not a competition. It's just who we are. And that's where we can start to have thriving conversations, and we can start creating spaces and safe spaces for us to be who we truly are. And now I look at Mark, and I was thinking, with your presentation and many other presentations, wow, I see so many similarities to what we think and what we do. So maybe this is the practical implementation of some of the things that have been talked about. And I hope you can see it, otherwise it's maybe just me living in my own microcosmos. So, who are we? This is the people who we are in the house. We're living there when we started it in the middle of May. As you see, I wear the same shirt today, so you could recognize me. Behind is the sketcher who's sitting in the middle of the room, Simi. Across him sits my girlfriend, Sissel. She's also from Denmark. Then next to her sits Geronimo and his partner, Michelle. They are already back in the States. Geronimo missed the wave for surfing, and Michelle had a visa issue. That's how it is. And there we have, in the front, we have Fabienne. So we replaced Michelle and Geronimo with Tamás, Mona, and Sylvia. And altogether, we are 7 people having our daily day in the house, and we are a wonderful mix of internationals and locals. And the international part is to put the people like me in and break a little bit with the barriers and test what is normal. And then you have people like Sylvia and Mona and Simi and Fabienne to actually say, Kristoffer, it's a common courtesy not to mow the lawn on Sundays. I didn't know. And it's quite tasty. But it's not only us who are living in the house that's who we are. Who we are is also the community around us. And this is reminding me of a very nice story about, we have been out for a weekend hiking, and the beautiful view next to a glacier, you have to imagine, in the Alps. It was also raining, foggy, and I fell a few times. So when we came back, I was quite tired, and we have this message board in front of us. I took a picture of it with the intention of calling it back. What it says is that I was alone here, and I would like to get to know you. And then she left her details. I completely forgot it. I completely forgot to talk about to call her. Though 5 days later, one of our neighbors in Guido is in our garden with a lady. And I thought, yeah, well, we have a lot of people coming in and out of our house. And I thought, yeah, well, it's just another one. I said politely, hey, how are you doing? Do you want something to drink? No, you're already the 3rd person who asked us for something to drink. Oh, good. Then we have a good community. Geronimo goes out, talk with them, and he comes in afterwards, and he says like, wow, this is amazing. It's like, whoa, what happened? You know that actually this was the lady who wrote that message on the board, and then our neighbor called her up to actually, hey, let me tell you about the house. Let me introduce you to the house. Let me, I want to support the guys in the house. And it's just like blown back. Wow. Actually, without never ever talking about, hey, when we are not there, could you please answer the phone or anything? We had suddenly created with this house and our presence, we had created caring neighbors without talking about resilience or something. Just having a message board, just inviting for movie evenings. This is what happened with Guido, taking ownership of his own neighborhood. So this is an example of one of our co-creation events. And if you notice very well, you can see the guy. There's 1 or 2 people you can recognize. I actually think it's even the same shirt and the same pair of jeans he's wearing. But at least he's wearing jeans in this picture, not pajamas. But here on this picture, it's a co-creation event. And this is what we want to do. We want to co-create with our neighbors, with our community, with our city, with Switzerland. We are not limiting ourselves in this very nice house and this very nice project to us inside the house and what do we like to see emerge. Now we want to invite everybody and then say, what is it that we need in our community? and how can we do it, and how can we empower you to do it? Because this house is temporary. It's going to be taken down in spring. So we live there temporary, and we know what we do is temporary. So what's going to be really interesting for us is to see how can we foster something that's living beyond us. So here you have like this, who we are. We are, very broadly, humanity. It's not just us in the house. So why are we living here in this house, and why is this project even existing? It's existing because if we go back to the who question, we want to maybe move away from creating another project that's going to solve all kinds of things, because we have tremendous problems. We talked about that today. What we also talked about today is all the solutions that are out there. We could have solved these problems yesterday. Why are we not solving these problems? I don't have an answer, but maybe it's because we're thinking the wrong way and we are thinking about the wrong things. So what about finding something we cannot disagree about? Health. Everybody wants to be healthy. Wealth. Everybody wants to have enough. Happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. Well, who will, please let me know, who will disagree with working on these three things, any of them? I'm happy that nobody raised their hands. So this is what we do, and this is why we are existing, to do it a little bit different, and to do this for ourselves, us living social change makers in this house, but also to spread it to the city. Because if you have many happy houses, you have a happy neighborhood. If you have many happy neighborhoods, you have a happy city. So what about we try to work like that and think about how do we spread it and not how do we impose it? Because I'm now from a bigger city, and it's quite often when they want to do some city renovation and make it new, they build another mall. But I never asked for another mall. But what about we have a co-creation and we figure out what is actually right here emerging in front of us and what can we create together? A third reason why we think we are relevant in this house is that we want to create social change from abundance. I think many of you, what I hinted to in the beginning is, you see so many great things that you want to implement in the community, but you probably know, I'm not going to pay for this. I'll not earn any money for this. I'll actually probably lose money with this. And I need to work and feed my family. So it just becomes this downward-facing rat race where we are writing and throwing fund applications east and west in hope for just sustaining and flipping any penny to actually create this change that you're dreaming about, because you really love your neighborhood, you love your city, you want to see it thriving. But you just have to do it on such bad conditions. So what is it that we can learn from companies that often operates innovation from abundance, because they know this is what we need to do in order to exist as a company and hold relevance? Well, how can we apply the same thinking into social innovation? So people living in this house, it includes me, I do not pay rent, I do not pay for food, and I even get money for living there. And there are no expectation too that I actually do anything else than waking up, taking in air, and sleep again in the evening. Actually creating a space where we're fiddling a little bit with the universal basic income, and where we actually also say, hey, there's no expectations to the outcome. So that creates to the how do we do it. Read this quote, it's really good. We do it by being playful, rebellious, and immature, we say. We are playful, like we want to have fun while we do it. Like work is not supposed to be like a hassle. We want to be rebellious by not having any objective with what we do, and we don't want to set any objectives to like the conversations and putting people together, because then we're not true to ourselves and the who questions, because then we start to defining what is it that we want to see, rather than trusting that putting the right people together, the right things will emerge. We are immature by not having an agenda. We put seriously people together and we do not have an agenda, and we ask you, so what would you like to see happening and emerging today? And trust me, you see actually the right things emerging. It's not just another hippie, hippie, hippie. No, actually things do emerge because we have a natural drive as human beings to do it. So how can we actually do it without being sober and responsible and cautious, but actually by being playful, rebellious, and immature? In order for this to happen, it's super important, and I think it's been touched upon in many different ways. How do we create a safe space for us to truly be who we are, rather than be this surface, this show of something that we aren't really? How can we be in even more connection with ourselves? So for this to happen, we have these three principles, and they are three equally important principles. And the two first one, they are very much being states. So it's cohering, to be in coherence with yourself. Listen to yourself. Here, I'm right here, right now. And spend a third of your time doing that. There's even a budget in our house to do that individually. How can you be more in coherence with yourself? The second one, again, a third of your time, co-root with the others, bond with the other people in your house, in your community, like spend time together, because when you're being, it's a little bit reversing the cycle of we often do, and then we may be, as a social change maker, rewarded with a weekend, like some being time, or maybe even a holiday. And that's been fancy, you know. So why can't we come from being, and then we jump into the conspiring, the inspiration, the imagination, the wildness, the magic that we actually have? Because when you actually trust your colleagues, your people around you, then it explodes so much more. How do we show up? We show up with self-respect, self-responsibility, and self-authorship, because that's not needed when you dare to step into this. And trust me, it is very confusing and very, I can also get anxious in this place. So it actually is also to listen to yourself and tune into, respect your own needs, respect what you are, and take responsibility to manifest it, and take the authorship to actually make it happen. So, and then the last thing, how do we do it? We do it with actually creating small daily rituals and actually nurturing other intelligences than just this normal one with the headspace. You know, in school you're often this much gets for you to the head. You stimulated this much physical intelligence, and this much for your emotional intelligence, and then you have for the spiritual intelligence. And we firmly believe that there's so much more out there, and we need to equal those intelligence out and listen equally to them and spend equal time with them. And create the magic, because that will appear when you open up for it and let things emerge, rather than looking at a direction and then go that direction. Another important part is actually to design a space. To design a space that is super open for conversation, that you can constantly shift and change to create smaller rooms in the garden, especially this summer, or inside our house, where you can have fruitful conversation and you can create this little safe space. It is something as old-fashioned as making handwritten invitations and distribute them to your neighbors. One of the consequences is that you might actually end up talking with your neighbors. But it's those small subtleties that we are not trying to do things in a really new way. We are trying to say, what can we rediscover of human collaboration technology that has already been there? I could easily send them an email. I have their emails. But it does not deliver the same message as something you have in your hand. And it's go and knock on your door to ask for a hammer. Because we can actually just use an app, and I can see where I have a hammer that I can borrow. But it takes out the human connection. It takes out the resilience of your community. And it's actually to create a really nice welcoming, so people immediately feel comfortable and can take off and see, hey, I'm grounded here, I feel safe, I can be who I am. They're not interested in getting anything away from me. So this is a lot of buzzwords that I threw out here, and it sounds already nice. And so what is it that we actually do? And I'm so happy that you were talking about, how can I do something for men? This summer we had a well-being retreat for men only, actually for us to men, and I had a very profound experience there, to actually step in to the feminine energies of myself, instead of just having the masculine energies, also stepping into being vulnerable, to being emotional, to talk about sexuality with other men. You know, actually try to co-own something that we often do not own as men, because, well, we have not taken the responsibility, us men, and I'm really looking at us men, because I can see that the majority is women who are here today who actually care about thriving and stuff like that. No, this is time for us men to actually step up and say, I want to own my shit. And we had a talk about suicide and stuff like that. I think there are plenty of evidence that men need to step up and own their shit. It's creating retreats. We had last week a retreat from a group of people from Budapest who are interested in setting up a Happy Lab in Budapest. It's creating retreats for ourselves. We retreat ourselves really, really nice, and actually dare to step in and say, yes, I want to treat myself really, really nice. And it's okay. Because often we are the last one when we're in change making and making a difference that we look after for. So what about putting myself, not my ego, but putting myself first and say, I also need to feel really, really well during entire time. Together with Mark, we actually called something rediscovered, again, Kaffele. It means, it's Bernese, German, and it means coffeeing. It means meeting together You barely need to have a conversation, but it's meeting together, have a coffee, with no agenda. So we have created the space in our garden, in our house, where we put people together and actually say, let's meet and have unlikely conversations with unlikely conversation partners. And we have small recipes for it. And one recipe could be, who are the 5 people that you spend most time with? And what does that actually tell about yourself? What is that kind of a mirror? We have long dinner tables, like putting up a massive long dinner. I think last time we had 60 people there in our garden, eating together and having conversations. And it leads me to the end point. Is you can think, oh, but that is a lot of conversation things that you have. Yes, and that is from our community co-creation event. That is what was needed, is to create a space for more meaningful conversations together. And actually start talking about something else than how is your lawn. It's also fine, but actually start about who we are. And actually to provide a platform where you can actually stop running, but just stand still, take a pace, take out the pace, breathe in, and then really, maybe there's more to life than what I thought. So with that, for those who stayed awake for my little talk here, is that watching this presentation is indeed your invitation to come and visit me, because I cannot transfer the experience of being in my house, in our house, because it's just something different. That's what I can see in other people. That's why you have the people you have seen on these slides are everything from refugees to the mayor of Bern to CEO of very big companies. And that doesn't really matter, because that was never the point of them being here at our place. It was actually just for them to give them a space where there's no expectation to them and that we have to have an agreement. Rather, we trust that if they really like what they saw here, then that's a way to empower them, to empower their family, and then the sustainable change, the resilience in communities will happen slowly and slowly and slowly. And it's also a different way with such a house to actually support social initiative and innovation in your own community. I have 30 seconds left. Thank you very much.